This is the lesson for Algebra for Section 4-3, Day 1, Arithmetic Sequences. Today we'll be looking at arithmetic sequences, which are adding or subtracting by the same number each time. Tomorrow for Day 2, we'll be looking at geometric sequences that will be multiplying by the same number each time. I put in some vocabulary words, some terms here that you need to know for both of them, and we'll take a look at them. So the A, anytime that you see an A stands for arithmetic. Arithmetic is adding or subtracting by the same number each time. The G stands for geometric. That is where you are multiplying by the same number each time. So for example, with adding and subtracting, you might be doing +1, +1, +1, +1, or -3, -3, -3, -3. For the geometric, for multiplying, you might be doing ×2, ×2, ×2. It's always going to be the same number each time, like +1, +1, +1. It will never be like +1, then +2, then +3. Nothing like that. It's always the same number each time. When you see an N in the formulas that we're going to talk about, N stands for the term number. So for example, if we were looking for the 20th term, N would equal 20. A sub 1 or G sub 1. It's pronounced A sub 1. That is said sub because notice where the 1 is in A sub 1. It's below the number. In Microsoft Word, there's something called a superscript. The superscript is when it's up above the number, like an exponent. This is below the letter. All right, this is below the letter, so it's not like an exponent, it's below, so it is subscript. All right, up above, it's called a superscript. So A sub 1 or G sub 1. Anytime you see that in the formulas, that is the first term in the sequence. So it's the number that happens first with whatever pattern we have. A sub n or G sub n. This is the term that you want. So for example, if you wanted the 100th term in the sequence, you would want A sub 100 because A sub n is just the term that you want. D is the common difference. It's the number that you add or subtract by each time. So for example, if we were adding by the same number each time, we might be doing +2, +2, +2. If we were subtracting by the same number each time, maybe we're doing -3, -3, -3. The common ratio, which we'll get tomorrow with geometric sequences, is the number that you multiply by each time. So maybe ×10, ×10, ×10, or whatever number it happens to be. So using these terms, let's take a look at arithmetic sequences. There's something known as the explicit formula. Explicit just means that it gives you the exact term in a sequence that you want. For example, instead of having to figure out if you wanted the 100th term, instead of having to figure out all 100 terms to get to that 100th, we could use this formula to figure out the exact 100th term in a pattern, in a sequence. So the explicit formula for arithmetic, A sub n. A sub n is the term that you want. So for example, if we wanted the 100th term, it would be A sub 100. Equals A sub 1. A sub 1 is the first term in the sequence plus the common difference. Remember, the common difference is what you're adding or subtracting by each time, times whatever term number you're looking for, n minus 1. And that's inside parentheses. We'll get to geometric sequences tomorrow. Let's take a look at the first arithmetic sequence. We have 2, 5, 8, 11, 14. When you take a look at the sequence, you want to figure out what's happening each time. How do we get from 2 to 5 to 8 to 11 to 14? I know that we're just adding by 3 each time. 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 3 is 11, 11 plus 3 is 14. They're going to ask you to find the next couple numbers in the pattern. So we're just going to keep on going. 14 plus 3 is 17. 17 plus 3 is 20. 20 plus 3 is 23. If you can't figure it out, because sometimes there'll be decimals, or there'll be fractions, or there'll be just weird numbers like 17. If you can't figure it out, all right, subtract going backwards to try and figure it out. All right, subtract going backwards. If I didn't know that we were adding by 3 each time, I could subtract 14 minus 11 is 3. 11 minus 8 is 3. 8 minus 5 is 3. Just make sure that you don't put like a minus 3 or something like that, because really we're going from left to right, just like we read a sentence. So how are we getting from number to number? We're really adding by 3 because the numbers are going up. When we take a look at a sub 1, remember that a sub 1 is your first term. What's the first term in this pattern? It's the first number in our pattern, which is 2. D is the common difference. How is it changing from number to number to number as we go from left to right? Well, it's increasing by 3, or you're adding by 3 each time. So we have to write the explicit formula. This is a common thing that they're going to have you do, and I'll have you do it on your quiz and on your test as well. Let's just recopy the formula from the previous page for a second and talk about it. A sub n, the term that you want, equals the first term, a sub 1, plus the common difference, d, times n minus 1. Well, when they want you to write the explicit formula, they want you to fill in this stuff in the formula, all right? So they want you to fill in your a sub 1 and your d. So we're going to have a sub n, the term that you want, equals a sub 1, which is 2, plus the common difference, which is 3, times whatever your term number is, minus 1. Now they're asking you, what is the 20th term? When they ask you for the 20th term, that means n equals 20. So I'm going to take this 20 for my n, and I'm going to sub it in for n, and sub it in for n. So what is the 20th term? Instead of a sub n, I want the 20th term, so I want a sub 20 equals the first term, 2, plus the common difference, 3. I want the 20th term, so 20 minus 1. So when we take a look at it, you could just type this right into your calculator, exactly how it appears. 2 plus 3, and then in parentheses, times 20 minus 1. If you want to do 3 times 19 instead of 3 times 20 minus 1, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. So the 20th term, when you type it into the calculator, is 59. Could you have figured this out by hand? Sure. This is your first term here, 2. This is your second term, 5, third term, fourth term, fifth term, sixth term, seventh term, eighth term. We could keep on going and figure out the 9, 10, 11, 12, and keep on going until we get to 20. But do you really want to do that? No, that's very time consuming, which is why we use this explicit formula. Think about if you had to figure out the 100th term. Would you really want to figure out 100 of them by hand? Probably not. Let's take a look at the next one. This one is decreasing: 50, 44, 38, 32, 26. What are we doing each time? We are subtracting by 6 each time. 50 minus 6 is 44, minus 6 is 38, minus 6 is 32, minus 6 is 26. If we keep on going to find the next 3 terms, we would subtract by 6 and get 20, subtract by 6 and get 14, subtract by 6 and get 8. So the term that you're starting off with, the first term is a sub 1. A sub 1 is 50. The common difference is -6. Technically, we can say that we're adding by -6 each time. All right. So that's why it's -6. Remember, if you can't figure out what you're doing, subtract going backwards. 26 minus 32 is -6. 32 minus 38 is -6. 38 minus 6 is 44, etc. Now, in our explicit formula, this is the last time that I'm going to write it. A sub n equals the first term plus the common difference times n minus 1. So the explicit formula, the term that we want, a sub n, equals the first term being 50 in our sequence, plus the common difference. Now, I don't want to write plus -6. I'm just going to write -6 times n minus 1. They want you to find the 14th term. So that means n equals 14. So in my explicit formula, I'm going to take this 14 and I'm going to sub it in for n and sub it in for n. So I want the 14th term. So a sub 14 equals 50 minus 6, which is the plus common difference, times 14 minus 1. I'm going to take this whole thing and type it right into the calculator, exactly how it is with the parentheses. And I'm going to get that the 14th term in our sequence is -28. Sometimes you will have decimals. In this one, we're starting off with 10. Then we have 12.5, 15, 7.5. I can tell that I'm adding by 2.5 each time. So plus 2.5, plus 2.5, plus 2.5. I'm going to add 2.5 again to give me 22.5. Plus 2.5 is 25. Plus 2.5 is 27.5. My a sub 1 is my first term in my sequence. That is 10. The common difference is what you're adding or subtracting by each time. So this is 2.5. Remember, if you can't figure it out, you could always subtract going backwards. The explicit formula, the term that you want, a sub n equals the first term, 10, plus the common difference, 2.5, times n minus 1. We want the 11th term, so that means our n is going to equal 11. So the 11th term, a sub 11, equals 10 plus 2.5 times 11 minus 1. I'm going to take that whole thing and type it right into the calculator. When I do that, I get that the 11th term is 35. If you have a fraction, like in this next one, don't use fractions. It just makes life more difficult. Change the fraction into a decimal. Remember, to change a fraction into a decimal, you have to do the top number divided by the bottom number. So 5 divided by 2, this is really 2.5. 7 divided by 2 is really 3.5. So again, I wouldn't use those fractions. I would make them into decimals. So how do you get from 2 to 2.5 to 3 to 3.5 to 4? Well, I'm adding by 0.5, adding by 0.5, adding by 0.5, adding by 0.5. So plus 0.5, I'm going to have 4.5, plus 0.5, I'm going to get 5, plus 0.5, I'm going to get 5.5. The a sub 1 is your first term. So that is 2. The common difference, I'm adding by 0.5 each time, so it is 0.5. For my explicit formula, a sub n, the term that you want, equals the first term plus the common difference, 0.5, times n minus 1. That will give me any term number in the sequence. They want you to find the 90th term. Would you really want to do this 90 times? Probably not. So a sub 90 equals 2 times 0.5, 2 times 0.5, sorry, I miswrote there, 2 plus 0.5 times 90 minus 1. You're going to take that and type it right into the calculator. When you do that, you get that the a sub 90 is 46.5. The other kind of question, they're just going to word it a little bit differently. It says, write the first 5 terms in the sequence, the explicit formula, and the 25th term. It tells you the first term is 5. Well, if the first term is 5, that means a sub 1 equals 5. The first term is 5. We're starting out with 5. The common difference is -3. So D equals -3. That means that we are going to be subtracting by 3 each time. Or you could say that we're adding by -3. That's the same thing. So if we start with 5, and this is our a sub 1. If we start with 5 and we add by -3, or we could say subtract by +3, this next number is going to be 2. Subtract 3 again, this next number is going to be -1. Subtract by 3 again, you're going to get -4. Subtract by 3 again, you're going to get -7. Again, we can say adding by -3 also. For the explicit formula, the term that you want, a sub n, equals the first term, which in this case is 5, plus the common difference. But we're not going to write +3, we're going to write -3 because we're subtracting by 3 each time or adding by -3 times n minus 1. That formula will give you any term number that you want. They want to know what the 25th term is. So a sub 25 equals 5 minus 3 times 25 minus 1. Again, take that whole thing, type it right into the calculator. We get that the 25th term in the sequence is -67. For the last one, write the first 5 terms in the sequence, the explicit formula, and the 25th term. The first term is 11. So that means a sub 1. A sub 1 is 11, the first term. The common difference is 5.8. So that means we are adding by 5.8 each time. So 11 plus 5.8 is 16.8. Plus 5.8 gives you 22.6. Plus 5.8 gives you 28.4. Plus 5.8 gives you 34.2. The explicit formula, the term that we want, a sub n, equals the first term 11 plus the common difference 5.8 times n minus 1. They want you to figure out the 25th term. So n equals 25. So we have a sub 25 equals 11 plus 5.8 times 25 minus 1. Type that right into the calculator, exactly how it says with the parentheses, and you get that the 25th term is 150.2. Again, we are just doing arithmetic sequences today. If you don't know, if you can't figure out the next number in the sequence when you have questions that look like this, just subtract going backwards. All right, that will help you find your D. Also, be very careful if you have a question like this where your common difference is negative or -6. All right, this will be a -6 right there. So just be very, very careful.